So for the lockout tagout here at the main menu, you want to go to the manual screen. Once you're in the manual screen, you will turn manual mode on. Whether you're doing a blade change or a chip out change, both of those will activate the lockout tagout procedures. So for blade change, an alert will pop up letting you know that you're ready for a lockout tagout. The lockout tagout pins will extend into the head. The heads will move into the correct position, and from there you will be ready to dump air and power off and lock the panel. Once everything is in its position, you can go ahead and power off here at the control circuit. When your machine has been powered off, you can now come to the FRL and dump the air. When your air is dumped, you will go ahead, insert your lock into the appropriate hole and pull the key. Now your air is locked out and tagged out. Now I will show you how to lock out and tag out the panel. When the control panel circuit and the FRL have both been disengaged, you can come to the main panel and turn it into the off position. You'll put your finger on the back to push out the tab for lockout tagout. You then insert your lock and lock it. And now you are ready to perform maintenance on your machine. All right, so the initial setup for the dogs, you will have to move this magazine all the way in the backmost position. At this point, you'll want to go ahead and dump air so you can move the individual dog itself. Once the air has been dumped, you can go ahead and use the roll pins here to push the entire feed forward to where you can get the thumb screw on the back end. Once you have this free, there's a jam nut down here that you will move either up or down, and that will be set to roughly a 1/16th to an 1/18th above this flush surface here. The easiest way to do that is if you use one of the material or the pieces of material you will be cutting in this machine, and you want to set it so it just grabs that bottom edge. And once that is set, all of the materials you should run after that will be able to be run on that initial setup for the dog. All right, so for the dog adjustment, the first thing you want to do is loosen that jam nut there, and once that jam nut is free, you will thread the thumb screw in to drop the nose of the dog down, and you will thread it out to raise the nose of the dog up. So the initial dog setup will be the same for both sides. You want to go ahead and bring that magazine back, and once the air is off, you will then again be able to push the feed system forward, and you will have the same jam nut and thumb screw on this side that do the same thing. So once you have your material in there loaded, you will be able to accurately choose where you want to set your dogs. All right, so once you have the power to on for your control circuit, it will take a couple minutes for the software to load, but once it does, it will load here. You will go ahead, use the green button to start the machine. After everything happens that needs to happen, you will want to home your machine out. Once it is home, you will choose your cut length and your cut angle, and you will click download parameters. You can set presets here. These will be the typical cuts you'll be making throughout the day. So you can choose for any angled cut, set any preset there, and each angle of cut has its own preset menu. From here, we will go to the manual menu. Manual mode will need to be turned on. Once that's on, you will have control of the movable head. You will either be able to close or open it and choose a set speed. The saw, this is where you will activate blade change mode and chip out change mode. You will also have individual control of each head's angle, whether it be 0 or 45. Cut chip out, that will be the chip out burning procedure. That will be after a chip out change. Feed cylinders, this will allow you to retract and extend the feeds and retract and extend the clamps. For calibration, this is where all of the calibrations for your cuts will be made, so that way you know your saws are in the correct position. All right, so to modify or set presets, the first thing you want to do, you want to go to the main menu and select the preset. You go to modify presets. You will then be able to choose the name for your preset, and you will use fractional or decimal input. So I'll go ahead and show you guys. Once that is saved, you will go back to the main menu, and then you will have the length and name for whatever preset you decided to choose. So now we have the diagnostics page. It will take a few moments for all of the data to download onto the screen. Once you're there, the diagnostics will essentially tell you all of the communications that are going on between the drive and the machine. We have a few new pieces of data that we chose to display here. They are both the timing from the signal leaving the panel until it gets to the extended position for our feed system and our saw cylinders. So here you can see feed cylinder manager and right saw and left saw manager. Those will be displaying in milliseconds how long it takes from the moment of the signal until it reaches the extended position. On each of those cylinders there will be mag sensors, and that is how we dial those in. On the diagnostics page it will also display the total cuts and the daily count cuts. And of course, to reset that at all, you just go ahead and reset the daily, and it should keep the total count cut the same. So the buttons on the lower right, the home and the reset, the home will be used every time your machine has been e-stopped. You don't physically need to home it out, but you do need to press the button and it will re-download the home position at that point. The reset button would just be to reset the user interface entirely. Once you reset, all of that information will go blank. Takes a couple minutes to boot back up, but once it does, you can go ahead and start your machine, home, and download your cut parameters again. So for the angled cuts, this machine can cut a 0 degree, 0 degree. You can cut a left-hand leg, which is 0 degree, and a 45 degree. Right-hand leg, 45 degree and 0 degree, and your headers, which will both be 45 degrees. On these buttons, the first number will always represent the left head and the right number will represent the right head. So if you're changing legs, every time you change a leg, you will need to update your cut length. So once you update your cut length, you hit download parameters, and the cylinders for the head position will change automatically. If you go to if you're changing any length more than an inch, after you download cut parameters, you will need to hold the OK to move servo button, which will drive the movable head into the position it needs to be. So in manual mode, once you've activated it, you will have the option to manually close and open the movable head. You can then choose speed anywhere from 1 to 100% to go ahead and do that. Next thing would be the blade change and chip out change. For blade change, both of those saws will move to the 0 degree position, then an alert will pop up saying you're ready for lockout tagout. To get out of that, you just go ahead and press the button again. If you are making a cut that isn't 0 degrees in either of those positions, you will need to manually move those degrees back again, or you can download your cut parameters from the main screen. For chip out change, the heads will move into the 45 degree position. The lockout tagout pins will come out. Once they are in their position, another alert will come up. Again, take yourself out of your chip out change mode. So for the feed cylinder, they are both in the retracted position. For the feed, you will press the button and the feed will extend. To get it back to the retracted position again, you go ahead and press the button. The same for the clamps. Now the clamps are retracted. To engage them, once they're extended, you will go ahead and press the button again to retract them. All right, so to go ahead and burn your chip out, the first thing you're going to want to do is turn manual mode on. You will then press and hold the cut chip out button. While you're pressing and holding the cut chip out button, you will start the sequence with the foot pedal by holding it until the saws start up. Once the saws have started and your finger is still holding the cut chip out button, you will go ahead and press the saw and the saws will engage there. Press the pedal and the saws will start to go down. What you want to do is take small bites out of that chip out as to not stall the blade going all the way in. So you just want to make sure that you're you have an eye at least on the movable head to be able to see how far it's going down into the chip out. So if for any reason your machine has gone out of calibration, in order to reset the calibration, you simply go to the calibration menu. There are 4 of the boxes for each angle cut. Each of these cuts will have their own calibration needed. Up here on the top you have all bevels, and that is a system-wide calibration. So for any reason everything is off by, let's say, 1/4 of an inch, what you'll do is you'll go in here and you will change plus or minus whichever direction you need to go to get back to that calibrated cut. Use 0.45 as a reference here. If you needed to do anything to change that, you open up this menu by pressing the plus or minus offset. You will then add or subtract however much from the cut you need to get back to where your cut is. So the first thing you would need to do is make a cut and measure that and decide in which direction you need to go from there. So on the top where you read ready to start, this will be where the actions are displayed that are required by you to run the machine. On startup, you will read e-stop in, and that will just let you know that you have to go physically pull out the e-stop button. On this left blank box here, that's where the alerts will pop up. If you have a feed alert, if you have any alert with the saws, that will display here as well as a pop-up as well. Below that, you will see which cut you are in, regardless of the menu you are in. You will see which angled cut, the length of your cut, and how many of those cuts you have completed. And right under that, you will see the servo position, which should match the length. And if for any reason that goes out of whack, what you do is you go back to the main screen and press download parameters, which will set you back to whatever your cut length is set at. So before you start cutting for production, there are a few adjustments you have to make on both sides of the heads. First piece of information is that your stock length must be 1 inch above the length you want to cut. Each cut set at the 0 marker here on the tape will cut approximately 3/8 of material off of the left side of your material. So if you were running a 2.5 to 4.5 inch, you'd want to go ahead and just loosen those handles, and you can slide left or right. And this will make sure that at the 45-degree angle, you're cutting 3/8 off of each piece you cut. Here, this is where you will set based on how wide your material is. You want to make sure that you maintain 1/8 of an inch gap between the front end of this part of the magazine and the back end of this part of the magazine. Once you have that locked down, then you want to make sure this red bar here sits 1/8 of an inch above whatever material you're using. So you will loosen it with the kip handle here, and you will just slide up or down to account for the thickness of the blade or the thickness of the material. So in order to make sure there's enough room in the magazine for your material to run effortlessly, you want to make sure, I have 1/8 of an inch spacer here, that you have at least 1/8 of an inch spacer between the front of the material and the back of this red bar. Likewise, in order for this to slide under that, you want to make sure that you have 1/8 of an inch of space in between the top of the material and the bottom of this bar. So I'll bring this on top of the spacer and tighten it down with the kip handle. Now you are ready to run cuts. So the hard stop on the fixed head in the magazine will be adjusted by loosening these 2 handles here. Now, if you set it in the 0-degree cut position, this will make sure that you have 3/8 cut off of the left side of your material. To move it any further this way would mean that you are cutting, you're cutting a piece of material in a 45-degree that has to be offset by the width. So if you're running a 2.5 inch cut, you want to go ahead and set this side to 2.5 inches and lock the hard stop down. Likewise, if you were to run a 4.5 inch cut, you will move it all the way to the left side to make sure that your 45-degree is getting cut all the way through your 4.5 inch material. Okay, similar to the hard stop on the fixed head for the width, You will want to adjust this based on the width of your material as well to ensure that you are pushing your material up against the dogs in the cut position. So if you are running a 2.5 inch cut, you want to set the front of this bracket to the 2.5 inch mark and lock that down. And that will make sure that you are hitting the uppermost corner of that material in the cut position. So the brush assembly here is to make sure that you maintain your cut position and the materials staying against the dogs while they're in motion. If we didn't have the brushes here, every time the dogs come forward, the material would be pushed up until it was in the cut position. So for the thinnest materials you're going to run, you will make sure that this bolt is in the lowermost hole on this spacer here. And there is enough room to make sure that you're flush with the top of your guard here in the highest position. If you're running any material that's 3/4 of an inch or greater, what you'll want to do is put this bolt on all 3 spacers in the uppermost hole, and the slot in these brackets will allow you to adjust for anything in between 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches. So there are also a set of brushes on the inside of the guard for the heads as well. The process will still be the same. However, this block is a cylindrical block that will have to be moved from the either bottom or top position. But for more on that, you can go ahead and refer to the maintenance video. So for making a brush adjustment, you will need to lock out and tag out the machine to get to the brushes on the inside. There are 3 bolt locations, and you can see them from the front of the brush assembly, and they're accessible as long as this plastic guard is removed. And you will want to make sure that your heads are in the 45-degree position so you have enough room to get your tools into all of the bolt positions. Okay, so now we are going to load up some material into the magazine to make some cuts. First thing you'll want to do is load your material into the staging area and drop 1 piece of material into the magazine. Then you'll be able to change your all of the adjustments for a new cut. So I'm going to be making a right hand leg cut. With the right hand leg cut, this needs to be set to the width of the material, which is 2.5 inches. And that will ensure that we have a full 45-degree cut on the left side. Once this is up against that stop, I will then make sure we have 1/8 of an inch of space in between the front of the material and the back end of the red part of the magazine. And this will need to be done on both sides. All right, so after you've adjusted both sides, or both back sides of the magazine, so you have an 1/8 inch gap from the front of the material to the red bar, you will want to make sure that you have at least an 1/8 inch gap between your material, between the top of your material and the bottom of the red bar. And once you have that, you can go ahead and lock it down with the kip handle. And setting this to 1/8 of an inch above the material just ensures that when you grab the material with your dog, you're only grabbing 1 piece into the feet assembly. All right, so I will be making a right hand leg cut. So I will change the angle of the cut. I will then set my cut length. After you've set your cut length and after you've changed your angle, you will hit download parameters. It will adjust to the length given it's within 1 inch. And after download cut parameters, you will then be able to load your magazine with material and start production. So for running longer material, you will want to make sure you have your center support in between both of the heads. When loading this onto the rails, you want to make sure that the back end goes down first and dropped onto front, because the back side has a chamfered edge to make sure that any weight on the front doesn't pop the center support out of place. So loading material into the machine, you'll want to start by placing your material in the staging area and getting it ready to load into the magazine. Once your magazine adjustments and your 45-degree adjustments have been made for the width and height of the material, you can go ahead and load your material into the magazine and make sure that all of your material is pushed up against the hard stop on the left side. That will make sure that you get the desired cut length and proper angle. Once you have everything loaded, there is a magazine loaded sensor on the left side that will let your machine know there is material in there, and that is the only way your machine will be able to start. Likewise, it will also prevent you from closing on material or moving it too far out of range for your cut while there's material loaded. All right, so we have the start sequence pedal here. To start this machine, you will double tap and hold that pedal to start it. If for any reason you need to stop the machine in cycle without engaging the e-stop, all you do is press the pedal one time, and whenever that cut cycle is done, everything will stop in its place. Now you are ready to make cuts, so I'm going to go ahead and start our cut sequence. All right, so there are a few main differences between the new prototype and the old 979-2. One of the biggest is there is no hex shaft that is joining both of the feed systems together. They now run independently from valve banks that are on each of the heads instead of a central valve bank for the machine. The second biggest safety improvement we have is the 360 e-stop. We have essentially a tripwire that you can pull from any side of the machine that you would need to. Another safety improvement we have are our guards. We have full coverage guards on this one. We have top panels, a three-sided main guard panel, and a clear plastic easy access guard panel that allow you to see inside each of the heads, but also allows you to only have to remove that for a blade and chip out change. We do have a new hard stop here. This will prevent your max cuts to a certain level, but we do have that safety sensor on the other side that if there is movement, it will prevent the machine from closing on material in between the fixed head hard stop and the movable head hard stop.